Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of Younique, Life Starring You on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. You can find them at artistfirst.com. And now here she is, your host, the lovely Susan Stackpole.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on Younique, Life Starring You. We are what we are because of you, and we thank you so much for your excellent support. We have a special project we do here at Younique, and scientific studies are increasingly showing how our emotions and our thoughts create a vibration that creates our experience and affects us and affects the external world. And so we just ask, in keeping that in mind, that you give yourself time, just even a couple minutes during the day and weeks ahead, taking some deeply cleansing breaths. Send yourself, especially in the world around you, loving thoughts, doing even the briefest meditation and saying even the simplest prayers. And we believe that this blesses and uplifts you and us and the world. We have a really fantastic gentleman with us today. He's so gracious to make multiple show appearances. He's definitely one of our very favorites. And I'll share more about him and then we'll bring him in. He's going to teach us about the importance and the significance of where we live, how that affects our lives. And he has some really excellent life insight as well. So I'll share more about him and then we'll bring him in. His name is John W. Mallett, and he is an excellent and insightful author, financial coach, housing industry expert, podcast host, and more. And John's early childhood dwelling in the projects fueled his inspirational determination, learning and teaching key financial stability strategies. And John has, during his 2 decades in home loans, personally originated over $1 billion, and that's billion with a B, dollars. John's higher education includes a Brigham Young University undergraduate degree and a University of Southern California MBA. John's inspirational book, Buy Your First Home Today, is a comprehensive guide helping readers navigate today's hyper-competitive housing market. And his enlightening podcast, Leaving Your Legacy Stories of Home Ownership, is enlightening people worldwide, helping them empower themselves. John's unique ability, simplifying financial awareness, inspires clients discovering how home ownership can be a positively transformative experience. Please, for more information, visit his website, www.johnwmallett.com, and that's JohnWMallett.com, John W. Mallett. John, thank you for your generosity and your graciousness, and most importantly, for your courageousness in your own life journey in walking the talk and leading us by example. Just so very grateful for you, and it just is always such a special treat connecting with you. Thank you so very much.
Oh, Susan, it's such a wonderful opportunity to be with you and your listeners today. I just love being on your show, and I learn a lot from you, and I'm always deeply grateful for you and your insights.
Oh, well,
it's great to be with you today.
Absolutely mutual, John. We make an excellent team. So I learned so much from you, and you always help facilitate such an enlightening conversation. So thank you. And would definitely encourage anyone listening, John, you've been so gracious making multiple show appearances, and each time it's a fresh and new conversation. So I would encourage anyone listening, please visit the website and listen to previous interviews. John always just offers great advice and encouragement. And so, John, for those who may just be meeting you the first time today, you're so passionate about the importance of home ownership and how that affects our entire lives. When you reflect on your life now, do you have a clear moment where you realize when that seed was planted?
Yeah, I think the seed was planted when I didn't have it. And you know, we grew up in Santa Cruz, California. We lived in an idyllic situation. We were 2 blocks from the beach. And we lived in a home that my parents owned. And, it was really a great, stable environment. It was good. But, you really don't realize what a stable environment you have until it's taken away. And so when my dad walked out on his wife and children, on us, then we had to move to a new town so my mother could get her college education. And as we were moving there, we moved 4 to 5 times because we were evicted. We couldn't pay the rent. And my dad was not giving support. And we ended up in the projects. And all this moving around is really on a very micro basis. Moving around from house to house for a child really uproots their ability to have any kind of stability. And the biggest problem is that when you're in that environment, you want to put a hole in the wall. You want to put a picture up. You want to do something like that. And you're told, no, you can't do that because when we move, that statement, when we move, automatically makes a statement that says you're not stable. When we move, you're not going to get our money back from our deposit. And so having gone through that experience and then ending up in the projects, that was eye-opening as to what that environment was like. And it was so difficult for me. It was months before I even had any of my friends come over because I was so embarrassed about where I was living. And yet I think I thank the people of California every day that we're on welfare and food stamps, that I had shelter, a roof over my head. And so going through that process of going from being in a stable environment to an unstable environment really ignited a passion to saying, I want to be stable. I want to have a place that I can call my own. And that's really where it comes from.
Wow. What's amazing, John, and maybe you could share, other people have had similar situations, right, where they've had these childhood experiences, and that while it may have planted in them a seed of desire, that was often usurped by the feeling of impossibility, right? That maybe it's a generational situation where nobody in their family has ever owned their own home. Nobody in their family has ever lived in a lovely neighborhood. And so even though they would have that desire, simultaneously there would be a voice saying, well, that's not ever going to be a possibility for you. Mm-hmm. What do you credit fueling your ability to believe beyond your circumstance?
Well, it really comes down, I think, a lot to intention. I think it has a lot to do with saying and holding that. I did a workshop for high school seniors in an inner city school, downtown LA, and it was a classroom that I went in and I gave a presentation, and it was a presentation on how to buy your first home. And I remember when I went in there to that classroom, they were going like, what is this guy doing here? I mean, I was the only Caucasian guy there, and it was like, gee whiz, what have you got to, they were confused. And I told them my story and I told them what happened. And, and we began to form this bond. And the thing that was really interesting about the discussion is that they had no idea that it was even a remote possibility. And what really made it so encouraging to me was the idea that before I came in the room, they didn't even think that it was a possibility. And when I left the room, it was like, well, maybe it is a possibility. We would get so many signals from other people saying, no, you can't do this. And I love the quote by Wayne Dyer when he says, by banishing doubt and trusting your intuitive feelings, you clear a space for the power of intention to flow. And, we're taught to doubt. We're taught the news media, it all says, you can't do it. Listen to my show. And the news media is so driven with news that is discouraging, especially about housing right now. And when I wrote my book, it was the most awful book in the world. When I first read it, I said, man, this thing is awful. After all the time that I spent on taking care of it and writing it, because it didn't have a soul to it. And then when I started to realize that homeownership is a sacred trust and that it transforms lives, then all of a sudden it opened up. And I was able to create a story about homeownership. And, there's just so much more to it than people give them credit for, that especially for individuals who don't think they can do it, it's all a matter of intention. And you'd be amazed at what happens when somebody has a desire to buy.
Mm-hmm. So helpful, John. And as you were sharing that, this idea came to mind almost about intention can almost be like a superpower, right? Where I think what inspires all of us is stories where somebody is in a situation that just is seemingly impossible, including your situation from early on. You did not have an easy experience early on. And for you to continue not only keeping that intention of home ownership, to create that in your own life and then be so passionate about it that you're in a situation where you help others have that experience also, is really a testament to the power of intention. And so what was one of the things, John, that for you, during times where you've had a goal that maybe has seemed impossible, or maybe at the beginning you felt very encouraged and then maybe some things happened along the way that made you question, is this going to happen? Can I do it? How have you navigated that? And maybe what lesson would you go back and maybe even give yourself at the time? So how have you managed to navigate the uncertainty, and then what advice do you have about that?
Yeah, I think, and I'll give you an example on that for a study that was done. I think me personally is that every day I have to step a little bit outside of the light. I have to actually take the risk. The biggest risk in life is not taking the risk. And the idea is that when you take a risk, you're going into the unknown. And my experience is that I have to do that on a daily basis. If business is slow, I've got to find a way to generate the business. And it's really interesting about intention, Susan. There was a study that was done by Harvard Housing Studies several years ago, where it took people who rented and it took people who wanted to buy. It divided them into two groups, and they found that the people who rented had savings of like $1,100, and the people who wanted to buy had savings of $8,100. Now that's not a lot of difference in money, but it's like a 600% difference. So it's a huge magnitude. And what the study found is just by virtue of having that intention, just by virtue of saying, yes, this is what we're going to do, they found a couple of things. They found, number one, is that more people get juiced over saving for a home than anything else. They can save for retirement, they can save for a car, they can save up stocks or things like that. But it doesn't carry the kind of juice that saving for your home does. For some reason, when somebody's saving for a house, especially the first one, it creates the universe coming together and saying, okay, I'm going to help you with this. I see it all the time. People come in and they go, there's no way we can buy. And then all of a sudden they get gifts and they get another job and, all these things happen. And it's just really this idea of intention.
Wow. What is something that for you, John, that was something that you maybe have set in your life as an intention that at the beginning you felt really encouraged, and then maybe something happened during the process that really, I'll put it this way, offered you an opportunity to assure that you were aligned with your intention at a time where it would have been really easy to become distracted?
Yeah, I think that happens in business. I mean, in our business right now, their interest rates are up, and so our business is slowed. And yet the whole idea is that no, we can't let outside influences affect what it is that we do on a daily basis in blessing the lives of other people and helping other people figure it out. And so our mission right now is where things are going well, but then rates go up, and they went up with such a quick magnitude that it just kind of froze the market. And what it did was it made it so that people were going, well, I'm out. I can't do anything about it. Everything is all my dreams are gone because interest rates went up or whatever it might be. And I'm here to tell you that that's just it's not what reality has to be. Reality is anything that you put out there that it is. And even though the market's tough, there are people that come to me and they go, I know that there's no way I can buy. And yet after about 20 minutes, they go, I can buy. It's simply because they don't know what they don't know, and they haven't asked the question. And I think that Tony Robbins talks about, if you want a quality of life, you'll ask the quality questions. Questions that actually are meaningful enough to where you have to respond in a way that drives your life forward, if that makes sense.
For sure. And something that comes to mind, John, and it happens a lot where people have experienced some sort of trauma, there's a tendency sometimes to internalize, where maybe people have set a goal, maybe they've set an intention, and something happens that seems to be the exact opposite of that. A lot of times people will internalize it and say, well, this is a sign from God, this is a sign from the universe that I'm not worthy of having X, Y, Z. And that it will put us almost into a spiral of like, well, look, this person over here has it, and they don't seem like a very good person, and I'm over here doing my best, and it just isn't working. How is that something that you can maybe help unravel for us in terms of separating or rising above the belief that lots of times a not so ideal environment will create, of feelings of not being worthy, not being enough, not being relevant, not being smart enough, whatever it is? How have you been able to transcend that, and what advice do you have for people maybe who are in that situation of saying, well, John, you just don't know, it's been my whole life, and obviously I'm just not enough, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever it is?
Yeah, I would think that the thing that has always got me through those situations, and remember, I'm a work in progress right now, so I'm going through some of those situations now. And the thing that I'm finding, Susan, is it always comes down to the question of asking in yourself, what is it that I must do? What is it that I have to do? Can I turn an intention into a must? And the must becomes so compelling that I have to get it done. And I think that there are so many instances where you have to put yourself in a position where you've got to make it happen. And there are so many situations that have been like that in my life where, to get a deal done, maybe the lender comes back and says, no, we won't do this loan. And you know that the loan's got to be done. right? Because I've already said, we can do this loan. And then all of a sudden, one lender comes back and says, no, it can't be done. Well, that's when I have to really turn it on and say, no, no, no. I'm not going to tell somebody they can buy a home and then come back and say it's off. I'm not going to make it so that they make the offer, they're in escrow, they're ready to close, and then somebody says we can't do the deal. And what's interesting to me is that when that kicks in, when they say that, I say, absolutely not. We will find a way to make this happen. That's when I have to go where I've never been before, right? That's where I have to go into an area that I haven't been exposed to, and I have to figure it out. And whether it's having a better conversation with the underwriter, whether it's getting management involved, whether it's giving it to a brand new lender, whatever it might be, we will get that loan done. And that carries my life. I mean, that is the signature of my life, saying, once I give a commitment, we're going to make that happen.
And I really admire your integrity, John, in terms of when you've made a commitment with a client and then saying, well, okay, I'm going to find a way, right? I really like that, where it's just, you're so committed. And that's really amazing. Congratulations on that, because I'm sure that there are many situations where that is not easy, helping that materialize. So
yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And it is something that we really have to focus on. And I really like to do that throughout my entire life. I had an experience where my son and I went skydiving. He wanted to go skydiving for his 21st birthday. And, I checked it out and I thought, well, that sounds all right. Let's go for it, And I decided that we would do our own shoot. So we didn't do tandem. We got hooked up. We didn't hook up with anybody. And it was very interesting because we went through an 8-hour class. And towards the end of the class, the last hour was all spent on what happens when something goes wrong. And I'm just going to myself, you got to be kidding me. I'm falling at terminal velocity, about 120 miles an hour, and I'm supposed to figure out what happens if my chute doesn't open correctly. And I was having these, I was getting shortness of breath, and my son even looked at me and said, hey, Dad, we don't have to do this if you don't want to. And it's like, no. We're gonna do this. And so sure enough, we went up in the plane. I kind of staggered onto the plane actually. And then when we jump, there's instructors that hang on to you to make sure that you employ your chute right, so that you're in the right body position. And so here I am falling at terminal velocity, and my instructor is giving me the sign to pull the chute, but I was having, I was getting discombobulated. I was kind of getting blurry. And as I was falling, I didn't pull the chute. And my instructor pulled the chute. And then once I stood up and the chute opened and everything was good, then I came to, and I was able to get down and land on the ground and kiss the ground. And I thought that because I didn't open the chute, it was over, right? And so I walked back to the instructor with my chute and, the parachute, and put it on the ground. And he says, well, how do you think that went? I said, well, I don't know. It wasn't that great. He said, well, were you aware that you didn't pull your own chute? And I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. And he said, and I was thinking that he was going to say to me, don't ever come back, because it's really hard to learn how to parachute if you don't pull your own chute to skydive, But what he said is, he looked at me and he tilted his head a little bit and he says, well, just make sure next time you pull your chute. Here I thought it was this big deal that was going to happen where I was going to get like interrogated. And he said, no, just do it next time. And so I thought about that. I thought about that a lot. And then the time came for me to give a presentation to youth a youth group, and it was on goal setting. And I thought, well, what do I need to do to make this a good experience to where I'm actually walking the talk? And the thought came to me, you need to go back up and skydive, and this time pull your own chute. And I just thought, no way. I thought, I am not interested in doing that. And it just kept wearing on me until finally I said, okay, fine. So I went back, I took the class all over again, went up, and I pulled the chute. I was clear-headed. It was a great experience. And it just depends on how bad you want it. You know, it really has a lot with intentionality and what has to be done.
Wow, that is an amazing story, John. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it took a lot of courage to go up the second time. I wasn't that excited about it. But it was like, no, I need to do that, because if I'm going to talk to somebody about their goals, I need to complete something. And in that instance, the completion was pulling my own chute. And so it can be related to a lot of things in life. And I think that there's some real lessons there that if you don't try, it's never going to happen. And the world doesn't want you to try. The media doesn't want you to try. You know, they're not interested in you trying and moving your life forward. They're interested in having you sit there and listen to everything that they're saying. Mm-hmm. And that may not be the case with all media, but in general, I really am in pretty much just saying, you know, I'm not going to be listening to a lot of it, because my life is not going to be revolving around what somebody else is telling me.
I like that idea too, about like what you're saying about essentially being your own voice, right? I like that a lot, because exactly what you said, it's so, and we're so easily influenced sometimes without even realizing. And so I feel like that is a really helpful insight. And kudos on your courageousness going the second time, because I would imagine it was even more unsettling than the first, because the first, you don't really know what to expect. So you have an idea. However, having already had the experience once, you have a much clearer idea from your actual experience. And so what is something else that experience taught you, John? Because that's major. I mean, first of all, congratulations. That's such a lovely commitment that you made with your son. And I think it speaks to your relationship with him, that he wanted to do, you know, he was desiring doing something with you to celebrate his 21st birthday. I think that's a testament to the beautiful relationship that two of you have. And just also just for your courageousness in saying, okay, that even though I'm feeling the fear, I'm going to do it anyway. What else did that, this is how I'll ask it. How did that experience change you? So especially the John that landed after the second time pulling his chute, how was he different than the John that went up the first time?
Well, the John that went up the first time had no idea what was going on. I didn't really know what I was doing. And it was uncertainty, and it was a really, you know, I was very filled with anxiety, and it was, oh my gosh, what's going to happen on this? And when I touched down on the ground the second time, I just felt rejuvenated, and I felt relieved, and I felt triumphant, simply because of something so small. And that's why Stephen R. Covey, he's no longer with us now, but he basically said to make and keep small promises. That's where the victories come. They're victories on a daily basis. And this was a victory that I had set an intention and then fulfilled that intention. And it really is a big teaching moment that there's a lot of variability in life. That's the thing that I'm learning right now more than anything else, is that there's a lot of variability. It's wide open. it all comes down to your intention. It all comes down to what it is that you must do, regardless of what everybody else is saying. Because there's people out there that will destroy you. And they may not do it intentionally. They may be your loved ones. They may be your family. But they will destroy you. They will say things to you that say, no, you can't do this. And I think that it's the point where you've got to make a decision and say, no, I can do this. And I'm going to do this in an effort to strengthen our relationship. So it really becomes a leadership position, I think, in that point.
Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, you always have such excellent insight, and I just really applaud your courageousness just on all levels, and just your wisdom you have in terms of recognizing the bigger picture. Just so inspirational, and so many people now can relate in terms of life in recent years is not what anybody expected, and a lot of people, I know, like especially this year, are just having a really, really uneasy year at a time where they felt encouraged that, okay, we're coming out of shutdown and we're being able to resume normal life and feeling very encouraged. And so one of the things I really respect about you, John, is your resiliency in so many circumstances where it would have been you would have been easily able to say, yep, I'm giving up. That's it. And that you keep finding your way forward. And so I really like that a lot. And you're so passionate, John, in terms of understanding what home ownership can do, and then options for people, including like reverse mortgage and that sort of thing. Can you speak to people who are feeling now that, oh gosh, with interest rates, with all these things happening, it's just not a possibility for me? And I'll just share this too. This is kind of an aside. I was thinking about we've been so fortunate in the last 15 years in terms of, or maybe 10 years, I would say, the interest rates being so excellent. And you think about before, though, people had substantially higher interest rates where years ago people didn't even think about it, and they still found a way having a home. So maybe you can speak to that, about just helping people find a way and understanding why is home ownership so significant beyond just having one's name on a piece of, on a deed.
Yeah, it really, what I'm finding, Susan, is that when people put the intention out to buy a home or to downsize or to whatever it might be, when they put that intention out there, it is life changing. That's the thing that really is really fascinating to me in this business, is that it becomes truly life changing, which is it just blows my mind as to what happens, because all of a sudden when they decide, when they say, you know what, I want to see whether or not I can qualify. And that's the first biggest thing right now, because there's so much media out there that says, no, now is not the time. In fact, Wall Street Journal came out, a very prestigious newspaper, and they came out and said, well, no, I mean, it's rents, your home payment is now going to be 52% higher than your normal rent payment. And therefore, this is not the opportune time to buy. And I'm just going like, as much as I like the Wall Street Journal as very prestigious, they are 100% wrong. And the reason why they're wrong is first of all, they don't take into calculations the tax advantage. The tax advantage, when the rates were so low, there was no such thing as itemized deductions. Well, now that the rates are higher, you can have itemized deductions. And in some cases, that's a tax shield that you don't have to pay, that actually gives you income of anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a month, depending on your loan amount. And then they don't talk about the idea that if you buy now, eventually rates go up or rents go up. If I'm renting, my rent will go up. It'll go up. And so if I'm a millennial now and I'm 35 years old and the rent is $3,000 a month, well, by the time I retire, if I don't buy, my payment's going to be $10,000 a month. Well, when you buy, that doesn't happen. It stays at one level, and pretty soon your payment becomes less than what your rent would be. Now, obviously I'm talking about buying responsibly. I'm not talking about doing anything that's not responsible, but it's the whole idea that if you simply ask the question, the most successful seminars and workshops and people that we have are ones who simply ask the question, can I qualify? Because there's so many people out there that aren't even asking the question. They think they have to have more down payment. They think they have to have pretty, excellent credit. And neither of those are true. And I'm just amazed at how much influence people get from outside sources that is so fundamentally flawed that we would actually follow that. And I myself am guilty of that. To think about that's actually the case when it's not the case. We have many people that are buying and they have the income and they're doing great. And now is the time to buy because there's a lot less competition because rates are high. So there's a silver lining. And it just blows my mind that so many people get enamored with what the media is saying versus what the real reality is. They never really sync up, especially about this situation. And the same applies for reverse mortgages. A guy by the name of Robert Merton, he was a Nobel laureate. And then he says, reverse mortgages is done all over the world, but the name reverse mortgage is so negative. In England, it's called a equity release. In Taiwan, it's called a home pension. He says the reverse mortgage for a senior is one of the very best strategies you can employ because you're taking money out of something that is continuing to grow in value. So you don't have to take it out of your savings. You can leave the money in the savings and your savings will actually grow and get larger. And empirical studies show, Susan, that it's a myth out there that says if I get a reverse mortgage, nothing will be left to my children. The myth is that more will be left to your children if you do get a reverse mortgage because then you don't have to rely on your savings and you're still in a house that's appreciating. So, there's so much myth and misinformation that it really is my job and to educate and to make sure that people understand that on the deepest possible place, your home is the extension of your essence. In China, you don't go find a home. They say the home finds you. So.
Wow. And wow. So we're going to come back to this idea about essence because it's so important. And just really briefly, John, for people who don't understand the idea of what actually occurs in a reverse mortgage, what exactly is that? How do you define that? How does that function?
Yeah, so basically what it is it's a mortgage for seniors that are basically 62 years or older. You got to have a lot of equity in your home. And let's say that that the home is worth $500,000 and they own it free and clear, right? They don't owe anything on it. And let's say that they're 75 years old and they're really having a tough time. And there's a lot of seniors right now that are having a tough time because they're so enamored with the idea that they want to leave something to their children. They're basically eating the same as dog food. I mean, it's just ridiculous that they're not taking care of themselves because they're so enamored with this idea of wanting to leave something for their children. And the way a reverse mortgage works is you get a loan, you get a line of credit, and you pull money out every month that you need it, or you pull it out in blocks, and your loan amount increases. So because you don't make a payment, you have what's called negative amortization. That means the balance of your home goes up instead of a regular loan where it's amortized, it goes down as you make payments. And so your loan amount does go up. There's no question about that. That's one of the aspects that makes a reverse what people look at as something that's not in their best interest. But the issue is that when you compare that to having taken money out of your savings, it's a lot cheaper because the value of your home is increasing at a faster rate than the balance. We just had concluded a loan for a client that was like a $900,000 loan. And because of the increase in the value of the property versus what the rate was, because of the loan balance increasing, they would be able to live in the property basically for nothing. In other words, there's no equity change in their property for 10 years. From the time they buy it to 10 years later, they still have the same amount of equity. So it has to be structured correctly. There are some caveats to it that you got to watch out for. But what it does is it creates the opportunity for a senior to sustain their standard of living without having to sacrifice their health and their well-being and their environment and their essence.
Oh, what an excellent description. Thank you. Thank you. I think that helps so much because a lot of times people will see the advertisements and say, well, I don't really, how can you reverse it? I don't understand. So that was really, really helpful. And then to circle around, John, to what you were saying about the idea of home being an extension of the essence, and what you were saying about in China about this idea that they believe the home finds you. One of the things, this may not seem related, I feel like it is one of the things about you that's so admirable is that you have such a sense of gratitude, and the way that you've been able to make peace with some of your life experiences that puts you in a position, I think, of really having this elevated perspective of understanding home is the extension or the expression of essence. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable sitting with themselves. They don't feel comfortable with some of the decisions they've made, maybe even decisions in the past that they feel like, oh, I could have had a home and then I made this choice and now I'm in this situation. And they can be really, really tough on themselves in a way that causes them not to see opportunities in the present. And so maybe relates to that. Maybe you could share a little bit about how you have been able to reconcile some of your life experiences and what you would share with people who maybe part of the reason they're not asking the question, can I qualify, is that subconsciously they don't feel worthy of having a better life because of maybe something that's happened or maybe choices that they've made.
Yeah. And I think that, and I'm going through that right now. I mean, I'm going through that right now as to trying to work to stay in the present. And I think the real key that I've really been learning about and studying about lately is gratitude. Gratitude in its deepest level, I believe, changes the molecular structure of your body. I really do. I think when you keep a gratitude journal, I was going through an experience some years ago where I was having chest pains and I was really, really just so much anxiety ridden. And I attended a workshop and they said, keep a journal. And I thought, man, that's really dumb because it's so simple. And so I started writing a gratitude journal. Every night I would write in that gratitude journal. And then I would do some breathing exercises. And pretty soon those chest pains went away. And seldom did they come back. It's building a body, I think, of gratitude. And it's easy to say, but it really takes practice to every day write in your journal, your gratitude journal. I am grateful. I am thankful. And when I start looking at things from a point of gratitude, then I can be a lot more present. And then I can really appreciate what's around me. And it's much easier to look at the opportunities. It's so easy to get caught up and the idea that I'm in my own little bubble, and I really got to keep what I have, and I don't want to lose anything. You know, gratitude is kind of lets it go. Gratitude is a way that you can receive inspiration. It's where heaven touches earth. It's that present. It's that moment. It's that time when you actually are in commune with the universe.
Oh, wow. That's really powerful. That's really, really, really powerful. And so helpful, right? In terms of it becomes really easy. I don't know. I don't know maybe if it's like socially we're indoctrinated into this idea of taking things for granted. Maybe it's, being in a capitalist society where it's, that there's always this idea of being presented of what we have isn't ever enough, that we're not ever enough. So I really like what you were sharing, especially about your own experience and the health benefits that you experienced from gratitude, right? That's really key. And I like what you said too about this idea of making it a practice and how that helps you be more present. Because a lot of times when we're having a distressing situation, the first thing for most people they seek is some sort of a distraction, right? To lean away, to move away from it instead of lean in and deal with it. And it doesn't help resolve the situation because then we're not actively doing anything to resolve it. And what other experience or what other tools do you have, John, when you faced situations like that where it's really uncomfortable and you feel like you've done everything you can do, and sometimes it's just having to wait, right? Like maybe we've said prayers about it, maybe we've done everything we can do, right? Even as it relates with home ownership, right? Maybe people have really been saving and they've put in all the information and now they're just waiting to hear back, or maybe the first choice of property that they didn't get the approval, and so that they're saying, oh gosh, I just don't understand. We really had our heart set on that. What is something that people can do beyond gratitude, navigating disappointment?
What I do is I think that you can't push natural causes. And I've had experiences where people just pushed and pushed to buy a home, and they got the home, and then they really regretted it. And they didn't let the natural, it's like being out in your garden. Yeah, it's like being out in your garden and pulling up a carrot before it's done just to see how it's growing. I mean, there's a time for everything, and the issue that I've found is that when homes people don't get that they really wanted, they find something 10 times better, but they let it go, right? They let it go. They just let it go, and let divine intervention. Sylvester Stallone he had a special that I watched the other day, and he talked about when he was writing his original Rocky movie, where they couldn't find a good wife. They had someone lined up, they were really excited about it, and then for some reason she couldn't do it. And then the gal shows up that we know as Adrian, and it's like, boom, this is the one. And Sylvester said, divine intervention happens. And so I think that you have to let it happen. If you're trying to force it, it's not going to work.
That makes so much sense. That absolutely makes so much sense. And oh my gosh, you have so much excellent insight, John. What for you has been something that's been helpful at times where you weren't maybe able to see beyond your circumstance, or excuse me, that maybe you just were having to wait on divide, that you had done everything that you could do, and you were in a situation of just saying, oh, I don't understand why this is happening, and am having all sorts of unpleasant emotions around it. What is something that you have done, or what is something that you do in navigating that discomfort? Because I think it's easy when we're in a good place in life to say, oh, yes, okay. And we hear these inspirational stories, right? Like Sylvester Stallone, and that he was able to wait and then the right actress manifested. And it's so much easier when we're in a comfortable place in our lives versus when we're in the thick of it going, I don't understand, nothing's working, and I don't understand why this is happening. What is something that you do to keep persevering?
Well, I really like the parting words of Winston Churchill, to Parliament, where he said, "Never give up, never, never give up." And I think that there's a point where every person has to decide what's that must, what's worth it to them, and how you're going to go about transcending your existence and what you're going to do to make your life what you want it to be. And I just believe that the only way that I've continue to work on my life is to never give up, to just keep persevering. And it's not a dumb persevering. It's a perseverance that comes from strategy and trying to make it better. And this the lady who who swam the channel from Cuba to Florida, Diana Nip. I can't think of it. Yeah, Naya. Yeah, that was an amazing story. And she just, when everybody else was ready to throw in the towel, what she did was she followed her innate inside of her. She didn't listen to everybody else, gave up. Yeah. But she continued to follow, and she had to do it 5 times at over 60 years of age. Yeah. And finally, the 5th time, she did it.
Yeah. I appreciate you mentioning that. That's one of my favorite stories, and it's something for me on a personal level that's really inspirational. It was really fascinating when she finally accomplished it, and there were all of these reporters, and it was early morning on the Florida shore where she landed, essentially, and that obviously she's just really exhausted, and all these people are saying, how, especially at your age, did you accomplish this? And, right, she's certainly not in any condition really to be answering questions after just such a tremendous event. And just the thing that she said, the thing that just kept coming to her mind was find a way, find a way. And so I really appreciate you sharing that story, because it did come to that point where her team had even said, okay, we think that this is a sign that really you should just be finished and just give up this idea. And like you said, there was just something inside her that said, go one more time. Go, and how would her life have been different, right? If she did not go that, that one more time.
And I think that there's really a good lesson in that. I mean, my wife and I, Carol and I, were talking about that, and she brought up a great comment. And the comment that she brought up is that the first 4 times was not in her favor. The currents weren't right. There's stingrays in the water, and she didn't have the right equipment, and she, the one comment that I thought was so telling about her story is that she had gotten out of the water, was on the boat. It was the 2nd or 3rd time that she had sailed, and she was just exhausted, and they were just going, this is it type of thing. And she said, oh no, we've learned so much. We can do this. And that's when she was at the lowest point where she failed. And yet she was saying, we've learned so much. We can do this. Mm-hmm. And I just think that the stars have to line up. things have to go right. On the fifth time, the currents were right. The weather was right. Things fell into place so that she could make it happen. But if she wouldn't have tried that fifth time, she would have never found out. And so it's by working. I think it's the idea of continuing to try. Sooner or later, divine forces will say, "Okay, I'm tired of you. I'll answer you. I'll give you what you want."
Well,
Don't bug
and
me anymore.
right. Well, and also, too, something brilliant you shared earlier, John, is about this idea of strategizing, right? And that was also something that Diana integrated, where she had the experience, like you said, that she swam into the man of war, and they said that she shouldn't have ever even survived that. So
That's incredible.
Right, so before she reattempted, she found a special wetsuit designer and somebody that created a special gel that she could put on her exposed face and her hands, so that if that happened again, she was fine. So I think
they actually made a mask for it too.
Absolutely. So and you had shared that so brilliantly earlier as well, that there's also this idea, right, of taking what we learn and creating a strategy to help us persevere. And I feel like that's such an important point that you shared about this idea of what does it mean to have a strategy.
And I think that's the part where I really have to grow up, where I have to mature. And that is, I need to do a better job having a strategy. I give strategies to my buyers all the time, and yet it's something that I need to work on even more. And I think what I'm learning, Susan, right now, especially in a book that I'm reading by a guy named Robert Lanza, MD. It's called The Grand Biocentric Design, and it talks about the quantum theory. And even though it's a book all about the quantum theory at the subatomic level, and it's all the science and everything that's about it. But what I'm learning from it is that at the very tiniest molecules that we have, there's a tremendous amount of variability, where when they shoot a photon out, they found it. They did this. They would shoot a photon out, and the feeling was, well, if you shoot it from point A, it's going to end up at point B at some sensor. And they found that with the quantum theory, it would end up in 3 different sensors that were 2 feet apart. And it just tells me that there's variability that's really up to me. What am I going to do with it? What changes am I going to make? It really comes out to what my decisions are. And that's why my decisions have to be based on truth. They have to be based on my intuitions and with people helping me and gratitude. All those things tie into that. But it's that must that we had talked about, that must, that where you want your life to be, and to actually follow that. Where other people say, no, just give up.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. You always have such amazing insight, John. So helpful. And so many more questions and not enough time. John, for those who are interested in your book, in your podcast, in connecting with you, maybe having some financial input, maybe applying with your company for home ownership, how can they do that?
Just contact me. My cell phone directly. It's 805-432-2382. Just call me. And I'll talk to your listeners, and anybody who calls me, I'll give them a free copy of my book, and we'll do everything we can to coach them and help them navigate through the process. You've got such great listeners, Susan, and you are just an amazing person.
Oh, thank you. Well, that goes both ways, John. And as we conclude, John, is there anything you're such a voracious reader, and you're always reading such fascinating books. Is there anything especially recently that you've integrated as a must in your own life, or maybe even something that one of these inspirational authors have written that for you is now especially motivating?
Yeah, I think what I'm really coming to learn through reflection and reading is that I already have what it takes to succeed, right? Everything is there. It's in me already. It's just a matter of moving forward and discovering it. You know, there's a guy named Charlie Tremendous Jones. He wrote a book and he said, you don't read books to learn anything. You read books to discover what's inside you so that you can become the person that you're supposed to be or that you want to be. And I think that the universe or divine or God, whatever you want to, whatever your comfort zone is on that, has given us and endowed us with so much. Just a matter of us moving forward on that faith that it's there and putting in a lot of work, and then asking for help along the way.
Oh, I like that so much. Thank you so much, John, just for your courageousness and tenacity and just your immense wisdom and just your passion for life, even during times where things seem so uncertain. It's so inspirational. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.